Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here Thursday now, October 26, 2023. Today, we're going to be looking at the pattern. If you build the pattern, will the storms come? That is going to be a big question over the next week to 10 days as we round out October and get into November. It looks like a favorable pattern will set up across the eastern Pacific and then eventually in the southwest Atlantic Basin, western Caribbean area. And then it's going to be a matter of, does something come along to take advantage of this favorable pattern and give us vents, to put a name on it? That would be the next name on the list. It is certainly within the realm of possibility, and if you have seen the 12Z GFS, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of chatter about that out on social media today. We'll take a look at a little bit of it. Maybe the whole thing. We'll see. Let's get there first. All right, in the Atlantic today, we got the post-tropical version of Tammy sitting out here, still generating some pretty strong winds. And again, these are just labels that us human beings have decided to slap on different things to keep up with them and to catalog them and so forth. It doesn't change the fact that it's still a big wind machine and wave maker and rain maker. It's just not considered a tropical cyclone any longer. There's Bermuda. Bermuda will get some impacts from this. To what extent, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, probably kind of squally, rather raw overall, but nothing Bermuda can't handle. Meanwhile, believe it or not, the leftovers of Otis, all up in here somewhere, remarkable what we're seeing from the damage down there in Acapulco, and obviously remarkable not in a good way, but you can barely detect any trace of Otis. Certainly the moisture from it streaming in to this big winter storm system now dropping out of Canada up through the Rockies. Had some flooding, even a tornado today in San Antonio. Been seeing that all across my Twitter feed. And then we got to watch this area in the southeastern Pacific. This has some of the remnants of Tropical Depression 21, which came in over here a couple of days ago. So yeah, things are still busy, and then we're going to really have to watch this area right through here as we end the month and get into November, because there might be something else coming along that'll have a lot of people talking, or maybe not. We shall see. First of all, why do we have an X up here? Well, this is the leftovers, of course, of Tammy, and it's all occluded and wrapped up with a front now. And again, this is just all meteorological stuff. Bottom line is, there is some chance that it could try to develop more tropical or even subtropical characteristics. I don't want to spend too much time on what all that means. You just have to know if you're in Bermuda, you might get some rain, maybe some wind. Maybe that rain blows sideways for a time, and certainly some rough waves, that kind of thing. The Bermuda Weather Service will be on top of it. Everybody will be aware. It'll be just fine. Could bring some nice tank rains, as they call it there, but we're not real concerned with this system becoming something that will be a real big inconvenience or anything like that. No concerns there. And nothing else in the 7-day outlook from the National Hurricane Center. Not yet, but as we get towards the end of the month, I suspect we might see something pop up here, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. First of all, in the East Pac, where certainly a lot of people are going to be on edge now across southern Mexico over here in the wake of Otis. We do have another system trying to develop, again, part of this, the remnants from Tropical Depression 21. This looks like it'll go on to develop. Environmental conditions appear to be conducive for development, as the Hurricane Center notes, and a tropical depression is likely to form by this weekend. And in terms of where this ends up, that's going to be a tough call, because the pattern, the steering pattern across this area all through here is kind of wacky right now. So we're going to have to just pay attention and see what comes of it on a day-by-day basis. So let's take a look at the next few days here. Let me use a darker color, blue, and let's outline what's what. There we have Tammy, the post-tropical version. Here's the disturbance down in the eastern Pacific that should go on to develop over the next few days. So let's just take this out to about the next week or so, and then we're going to switch gears and set everything up for what could happen later on. All right, so let's move this out. There's 24, 48 hours there, and you can see Tammy here could become, again, it's all just the classification stuff. it gets a little bit better organized, maybe sheds the frontal influences, might become tropical storm or subtropical storm Tammy again. I care, but I don't care. The bottom line is it could bring some impacts to Bermuda, and then it kind of moves away again. Now we're out at 72 hours. And just notice, even at 3 days out, we're starting to get all kinds of interesting things down here. A big gyre setting up. I'll just kind of draw some arrows in here to help you follow these wind barbs in a general sense. Big cyclonic gyre sitting down here. This is the system in the eastern Pacific that we will obviously keep a close eye on. It's to the south of Guatemala there. Keep on moving. This is 96 hours. Not much really happening overall, just different disturbances out there. Certainly active. Going to be a lot of clouds and convection on the satellite imagery, that's for sure, over the next several days. And then we get out to day 5. And in this particular run of this one model, the GFS over here, our East Pac system comes east and comes back in towards Central America from whence it came, right? Because it generated here, went this way. Now it's going to come back, it looks like, at least on this model, and make landfall on the Pacific side of Central America, down there in Nicaragua, right? So maybe. We shall see. So that's 5 days. We get out to 6 days, and then finally day 7. At day 7, we do have this pretty large, again, this sort of gyre sitting down here, very large area of convergence, just unsettled weather all around. Now, let's switch gears just for a minute and take a look at this. We still have the very warm water temperatures relative to average all through this region in here, and even in a good part of the Gulf of Mexico, not so much the western and southwestern Atlantic any longer. And of course we do have our El Nino out here, and by the way, there is the cold wake left in the wake of Otis. It churned up the waters out there, obviously, being as strong as it was. But yeah, we really need to start watching this area right through here, where water temperatures are sufficiently warm. Now, why would that really matter? Well, let's take a look now. This is the current pattern. Okay, we're back to time 0 here, the 12Z. Now we're up at 200 millibars in the atmosphere, way up high, where the airplanes fly, where the jets fly, right? So what are we looking at? Well, currently, it's pretty favorable upper level wind-wise over the Gulf, but there's nothing there to take advantage of it. On the east side of that big upper high, we've got this trough carved out in here. There's the post-tropical version of Tammy. It's got some southerly shear going over the top of it, so it's not very helpful. And some dry air has gotten in there. You got that front nearby, and it's just all mixed up with that. So that's where we are currently. Let's shift this out to a week. All right, watch the time go by. There we are. Now we're out at a week. Now we got this jet streak coming across Florida. Very strong upper level winds at the 200 millibar level. But we get rid of the trough, or at least shift it more out to the east. Some troughiness in there. And now we're developing more of an anticyclonic pattern in the upper levels, i.e. favorable 1 week out. This is November the 2nd, okay? Further out in time, we can stretch this. And let's just go to day 10, because again, this is a pretty big piece of the puzzle, so to speak. I've talked about this recently. We're looking for the big clues, not necessarily the storms underneath those clues, so to speak. And I think that would have helped a lot. I talked about this yesterday with Otis. If we had looked at the larger environment instead of just what's happening near Otis, maybe it would have been more obvious what was going to happen. They're going to be researching that for years. And I don't want to turn this back into an Otis discussion. But the pattern is very important. I remember last year, Eric Weber Weather on Twitter, put out a tweet talking about a very favorable pattern in the Gulf of Mexico, that there should be a major hurricane in that pattern. And so then along came Ian. So the pattern was there first, then we had Ian. Now sometimes you can get the pattern and nothing happens, which is exactly what we see right now in the Gulf of Mexico. Very favorable upper level winds over the Gulf, and there's nothing there. You know, we just got lucky. So that being the case, 10 days from now, and that's not incredibly far out in time when you're talking about a very large weather system like this huge upper high, part of the Madden-Julian oscillation, also a very trackable feature. And, we're talking thousands of miles across this feature here, not a tiny little small weather system. Now, maybe this doesn't happen at all. That is certainly possible. But the pattern looks like it's going to be favorable as we get into the first week of November. So then it's going to be a matter of, does something happen underneath that pattern? And that's where we go back to the lower levels at the 5,000 foot level. The GFS, anyway, is suggesting that there will be something underneath that favorable pattern. There may not be, certainly, but the GFS is thinking, if you want to call it that, I hate anthropomorphizing, whatever the word is. They're not people, they don't really think, but it spits out, they better not, it spits out this solution here where you get a tropical cyclone that heads up towards Florida. Now, before we get all worried about it, and I know there's a lot of posts on this run on social media today, especially on Twitter, because it takes that and it runs it right up the East Coast and turns it into this massive blizzard. I mean, come on. Not quite the same odds as winning the Powerball. Maybe they are, I don't know. It's that's what the long-range models do. They entertain us from time to time. But we got to first see, is the pattern there? And it looks like it should be. I mean, the MJO is coming. That's a pretty big trackable feature. Those don't just go away normally. The MJO is a big weather phenomenon globally, and it's not too often that they just shut down. Sometimes they happen. The MJO will collapse in one region or the other around the planet. This oscillation of favorability, rising air versus sinking air. So it looks like as we end October and get into the first part of November, that the rising air will be in place in the western part of the Atlantic Basin, the Caribbean Sea area. And then whether or not any of these pieces of energy can ever do anything, that's the part we will wait for later. All right, so this is where we are. What do they say? How it started and then how it's going now or whatever. We shall see. I'm not going to take 10 days off, but let's check back in 10 days, right? We will certainly do just that. Now, it is important to note, if something were hypothetically to get up into the Gulf and come into this region in here, let's just say, what are the water temperatures like? Well, they are warmer than average generally, but right up against the coast here, water temperatures are sub 80 degrees Fahrenheit. They're less than that. There's your 26 Celsius isotherm right there. Southwest Florida, though, it's not out of the question. You remember Wilma was late October 2005. It's not impossible to get something turning that corner. And I know we're just talking about Florida here. The Bahamas, more at risk. I think about Hurricane Michelle in 2001, Category 4. In November, early part of November, a similar setup. Huge area of anticyclonic flow aloft. Very favorable pattern, another way of saying that. And Michelle cut pretty hard across Cuba and in through the Bahamas. Close enough to Florida that I actually went down with my colleague Jesse to Marathon and elsewhere in the Florida Keys, just in case. But, we'll see. Has the modeling come far enough since 2001 that we can see these things a week to 10 days out and say, maybe something is brewing that we really need to keep an eye on? We don't know. That's the problem. We just don't know for sure, but we're going to be looking out for that pattern. And to be fair, just in case something were to come up around the East Coast and Southeast Coast, yes, water temperatures have cooled off substantially through here. You got the Gulf Stream sitting out here, and yes, if we were to get the 1 in a billion chance of something running up the East Coast, we'll deal with that later. Water temperature is very cold. It would phase with some kind of an upper trough, some Arctic air. Yeah. We'll see. I'll believe it when I see it. But you know what? If the 12Z GFS, and you know what? Go look at it. Go look at the surface map. It's fine, because everybody that watches me, you're pretty smart people, aren't you? Of course you are. And that's just way out in the future. Interesting to look at. Amazing if it were to happen. Maybe a lot of negativity with that, negative impacts. But if it did happen, absolutely we'd be all over it. But, again, that's fantasy land. for the models with zeros and ones. That's not reality, not yet. All right, so we'll keep an eye on things as we round out the month of October and see what happens. Why not? What else is there to do, right? All right, you guys have a great rest of your Thursday. As always, thanks for tuning in and giving me a part of your day. From all of us here at Hurricane Track, I am Mark Sudduth, and you bet I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.